Welcome to Nigeria's Social Studies. In this video, you're going to be learning about drugs. By the end of this lesson, you're going to learn what drugs are, you're going to learn the different forms drugs take, you're going to learn the differences between medicines prescribed by doctors and those people use recreationally. You're going to learn the reasons why people abuse drugs. What are drugs? Drugs are chemicals that change the way our bodies work. When drugs get into our bloodstream, they are transported to the various parts of our body, such as the brain. When they get to the brain, they can either dull our senses or intensify our senses. They make us sleepy, they can reduce pain, they can stop pain. Some drugs can affect the mind, the emotions, the behavior of people. Drugs come in different forms. They can come in powder, capsule, tablets, liquid or gas form. Drugs can be swallowed, they can be inhaled, they can be injected, they can be sniffed. Drugs in the form of medicines help our bodies to fight germs and diseases. When we take them, if we're ill, we get better after taking them. There are some popular drugs in every home in Nigeria. We have Paracetamol, Panadol, Aspirin. I'm sure you've heard about at least one of these drugs. They take away headaches and body pains. Who should administer drugs? Doctors, nurses, pharmacists have been trained to give us drugs. They've been trained to administer the right drugs for the right kinds of illnesses. So, you should always rely on them to administer the right drugs to you. Drug abuse. What is drug abuse? Drug abuse is when people use certain drugs for the purpose of creating pleasurable effects on the brain. It is also when people use drugs in a manner that harms the body. There are a lot of drugs that can change our mood and make us to act strangely. These drugs that can make us do this are dangerous. They are addictive, meaning that when people take these drugs, they feel that they cannot live without the drugs, that they cannot be happy if they do not take those drugs. People who take drugs and cannot do without them are called drug addicts. Examples of drugs that are abused are cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, and heroin. Why do people abuse drugs? People abuse drugs for different reasons. The reason why James abuses drugs is different from the reason why Jane abuses drugs. Some persons do it for experimental purposes. They are curious. Out of curiosity, they want to know what happens when they take the drugs. And because of this, they end up experimenting and they become addicted to the drugs. Another reason is family history. If a person is from a family that has a history of addiction, that is, the mommy or the daddy or someone else in the family is addicted to drugs, the child may grow up becoming addicted to drugs also. Prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are the drugs that doctors give us when we go to the hospital and we are not well. Doctors give us these drugs to help us feel better. So they are seen as safe, but that is not always the case because some individuals take these drugs the wrong way. The way they are not supposed to. Some take so much more than what they are supposed to take because of how the drugs make them feel, and they become dependent on the drugs. Another reason is loneliness. When people lack daily interaction with others, when they feel isolated from their friends and their family, they turn to drugs because they believe that the drugs will help them to feel less lonely and more content. The fifth reason is peer pressure. People want to fit in. They want to do what their friends are doing. They want their friends to love them. Their friends can also make them do it. You can tell them to take the drugs. If you want to be my friend, if you want to remain in our group, you must take the drugs. And because of that, certain people turn to drugs so that they can fit in with their friends. The sixth reason is the feel good feeling. They call it the feel good feeling because remember, we had said that when we take drugs, the drugs go into our bloodstream and they are moved to different parts of our body, especially the brain. So when the drugs get to our brains, there is a feeling it gives us, a feel good feeling. It happens with certain drugs. So when people take those drugs and they feel that way, they become dependent, especially people who are usually sad, who are not always happy, who feel so good only when they take such drugs. When that happens, they become dependent on them. The last reason is mental health illnesses. Some persons have mental health illnesses. Rather than going to get medical help from doctors in a hospital, they prefer to take the drugs. They believe that the drugs will help them to cope rather than going to get help. Now that we know why people turn to drugs, why people abuse drugs, what are the effects of drug abuse? There are so many of them. We're going to look at just a few of them. Brain fatigue, dropping out of school, mental disorder, poor school performance, lungs disease, dizziness, convulsions, frequent accidents, and aggressiveness. How can you help a drug addict? You can help a drug addict by reporting any change in behavior you notice to your parents, to teachers, or to other adults. You can seek medical attention, go for counseling, and for rehabilitation. Drugs are dangerous when used the wrong way. If drugs are being used for taking care of our illnesses, for making us feel better when we are sick, that is good. If drugs are being taken for recreational purposes, to make us feel high, to make us feel good, that is wrong. Therefore, say no to drugs. Say no to drug abuse.